Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. This is your host, Adiba, and today I have with me a woman who's been through more than the most and still find a way to turn every setback into purpose. Please join me in welcoming Emily Korir. Emily, it's great to have you here in this conversation with me today. And what I admire most is how you lead with empathy and courage, proving that resilience can create real change. Emily, it's amazing to finally have you here today. Your story has moved me deeply. And how does it feel to you to look back now and see the kind of impact your journey is making?
Oh, I'm really grateful. Thank you for having me, and thank you for even considering my story. I'm really, really grateful. Um, to look back now, I am so grateful for everything I went through. Because of that, I am here now, a little girl from a small village in Africa, but having a lot of global uh, influence and impact that I never ever imagined a girl like me would have.
All right. Talking about your childhood, Emily, your story begins in circumstances that many people would find impossible to even talk about. I was struck by how much courage it must have taken to simply exist in that space as a child, surrounded by so much pain and rejection. So, I wanted to ask when you think back to how your life began, do you remember feeling as a child who had to grow up faster than the
Yeah.
most?
My mother was raped at the age of 13. She was only 13 years old. And when um, she had been sent to the river by my grandmother, so her mother, in the evening, and she was raped, but she didn't even know that what had happened could cause her to be pregnant. So she didn't even know she was pregnant. And 2.5 months later, she was in school and she was running cross country. She was the first girl in her family to go to school. And she um, she fainted at school. The teachers took her to hospital, and that's when they found out that she was pregnant. And when she was brought back home by the teacher to tell her grandmother what had happened, when they found out that she was pregnant, it caused so much shame and so much pain for her family. But they circumcised her that night. So that's female ge- genital mutilation. They circumcised her because the culture is a child cannot give birth to a child. But the only way to go from being a child to a woman is to be circumcised. So they circumcised her and she bled almost to death. And my mother says, my pregnancy, her pregnancy of me was very high risk. Many times she almost lost me, but she fought through and she gave birth to me. And after she did that, my grandfather she had caused so much shame for the family. So she used to be given so much hard work down in the farm where no one can see her. So my grandmother decided to take us out of the village because they were planning for my mom to get married to a 67-year-old man to be like the fifth wife. So my grandmother, we left the village and went to Nakuru, and that's where I was raised in the slums of Africa. So my story was not, I was not one to be born to lead. I was born out of that pain. And like you said, how did I feel? When I think back to my early life, what stands out the most for me is the feeling of confusion and loneliness. Because as a young child, you want to be happy, running around, playing. But for me, there was so much pain, emotional pain. I didn't really understand why life had to be that hard. There were moments when I felt invisible, like my voice, my mother's voice, my grandmother's voice did not matter. And that made me so sad. But at the same time, though, inside me, I refused to give up. My grandmother and my mother taught me not to give up, that everything in life depends on how you feel about yourself, not what people feel about you. Yeah.
That is true, Emily, and I really feel you. And it's incredible how early resilience shows up, even when we do not have a name for it. And it
Yes.
sounds like those early years build the foundation for everything you become later.
Yes.
Yes, and your recovery from the stroke is something that really stands out. Most people talk about survival, but you talk about rediscovery, learning
Yes.
how to walk, talk, and think again while keeping your purpose alive.
Yes.
After the stroke, when you had to start from scratch, what was the first thought that made you decide, I am not done yet?
So after the stroke was a really sad time in my life. Our son was only 5 months old. And I've had the stroke. They've said I will never walk, talk, read, or write again. Um, I couldn't barely recognize anyone. For like my memory, I lost my memory. I couldn't remember my children, my husband, my own life, and I I couldn't really imagine how life will go on from here. But deep inside me, from rehab, I knew there was a voice that kept whispering, this cannot be how my story ends. Considering where I've come from, honestly, it cannot end here. It cannot end like this. So I kept fighting. And I remember the day I was discharged from hospital, my doctor, my neurologist was telling me, Emily, majority of the people that have the stroke that you had, 95% of them die, and the 5% that are left always leaves my rehab, his rehab, he calls it. They leave rehab either on a wheelchair or bedridden. And he said to me, Emily, I am discharging you and you're walking out of my rehab. I want you to know that your life has a meaning. I need you to go and find your purpose because there's a bigger purpose for your life. So please go find it. And that's what keeps me going. It keeps me reminding me that I suffered a severe stroke, but God preserved my life. And that's what I do every day now.
Emily, that mindset to choose life over limitation is so powerful, and it says a lot about how inner strength is built, not found. Uh,
Yes.
okay, we often celebrate resilience as a strength, but few people talk about the quiet, lonely parts of recovery, the silence between what happened and what is next. How did you deal with that silence between survival and recovery?
Uh, on the outside, you see everyone is celebrating you. You're getting better. You are becoming. You're healing. Um, but on the inside, you're smiling. Yes, you're walking again. Yes, but rebuilding your life. But inside, there's a very deep loneliness that words cannot describe. I cannot describe it to you. Inside, there's because no one really sees the quiet battles, the tears at night when you're going through pain, because I still have cognitive fatigue. I am still don't have much feeling on my right side, but I have sensory, which sometimes is very painful, but nobody really sees that. Nobody really see. For me, I dealt with that silence by learning to sit still, to sit with it, to pray. I stopped fighting it and I started listening to what it was, and trying, and what why was it here? What is it teaching me? In that stillness, I began to rediscover who I was, not the woman that's being defined by the pain and the stroke, but the woman who had survived it all since her childhood. And my faith played a really, really big part too. I journaled a lot. I cried a lot. I walked too. I go for walking and reminding myself that healing isn't loud sometimes. It's just the quiet decisions that you get to choose every day, one day at a time. The silence became sacred, and it was where I met myself again, where purpose started to speak louder than pain.
That is deep, Emily, and that kind of honesty is very rare. People forget that healing is not linear, it's layered with moments of doubt, reflection, and grace.
Yes,
And you have done incredible work through BET Group Global, and inclusion is a word people love to use, but
yes,
actually living it inside a business takes persistence and heart. Can you
yes.
share a moment when you realized people were finally beginning to feel the change, not just talk about it?
You're right. Building inclusion into a business is much easier said than done. I think every business owner would tell you it's one thing to have the right policies in place or statements, but it is something entirely different when people begin to feel that inclusion in their bones when they come into the office every morning. I remember one moment so clearly. We had just promoted one manager. We promote from within. We really build our teams from within. We prefer people who started with us from the lowest role and climb up. So we had just promoted one manager who came to Australia as a refugee from Sudan, and he walked into our office after we announced the promotion with tears in his eyes, and he said, I remember, Emily, I have worked in this country for 17 years. No one has ever seen my potential until now. Thank you for seeing me. And he just boiled crying, and we were all crying because he came from Sudan, and he had a law degree, he had an MBA, but he was working a very small role, but was very committed, very he took his role very seriously. So that moment really broke me and healed me at the same time, because it reminded me why we do what we do. Because inclusion in my eyes, and inclusion for me who had been excluded many times, many places, inclusion is about giving people a seat on the table. And if there's not enough seats, build a bigger table as a leader. It's about recognizing greatness that has always been inside them. And at that point, I knew the change had begun. It was just something we talked about with everyone, and we want everyone to feel and be a part of it. And that was showing up with confidence, leading with purpose, and believing that truly we belong. That's when I knew my fight for inclusion goes on, and it had become a big part of my culture, not just of our conversations. And I have mentored my managers to do the same for the people they lead.
That's such a defining moment when you can see inclusion shifting from policy to culture. Uh, you move between Kenya to Australia and UAE, three very different worlds that must constantly stretch your perspective on leadership and identity. How do you hold on to your purpose when each place demands a different version of leadership from you?
It's so true. Moving between Kenya, Australia, and the UAE means constantly for me stepping into different worlds, each with its own culture, its own expectations, and the way of doing things. But what has kept me grounded, I could tell you now, is through it all, is knowing why I lead, not just how I lead, why I lead. So I look at my teams, and my purpose has never changed. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. It's to create spaces where people, especially women, and those with disabilities can rise and thrive. Those two things don't change, being a woman or someone with a disability. The expression of that purpose for me might look different in each country. So, for example, in Kenya, for me, it's about community and resilience. In Australia, it's a structure and inclusion that I continue to fight for. And in the UAE, it's all about innovation and vision, but the heart of it remains for me. It's people, it's the same people. I have learned to adopt my leadership without losing my essence. I lead with empathy. It doesn't matter which country, strength and authenticity. These values can translate anywhere in the world. And honestly, that balance between cultures has become my greatest gift. It's taught me that true leadership isn't about fitting in, it's about standing firm in who you are and while building bridges that bring others along, and trust and being transparent. It really allows people to lean in. It doesn't matter which country you're in.
Uh, Emily, you often talk about leading with heart, and it's such a simple phrase, but it carries deep meaning, especially in business where empathy can sometimes feel like a weakness. What does that actually look like in the middle of a tough business decision when empathy might slow things down?
Oh, that is tough. That's a hard question. And I think any leader listening will feel it. So, leading with heart for me, it doesn't mean avoiding the hard decisions. It doesn't mean that I'm soft. It means making them with humanity. In any business decision, there are moments when you have to make tough choices that affect people, the people that you lead. Let's say, for example, if you are restructuring, which I have been through in most of the businesses, and letting someone go or saying no to an opportunity that I can see yes, but no. Those moments test my values. It tests your values more than your strategy. For me, leading with heart truly means slowing down enough when there's a situation and asking the right questions, listening deeply, leaning in, and bringing everyone along the journey. I've found that transparency keeps people calm, even when there's a tough decision to be made, even when the news is tough. It's just about seeing the person behind the position and treating them with dignity and respect. And sometimes empathy might slow the process, but it also builds trust, and trust is what sustains businesses. When things get challenging, which they always do, people will forgive a difficult decision if they feel you have seen them, you have heard them, and you've valued them. That's what leading with hearts for me looks like: being human, being present, and guiding others through the journey with honesty and care.
That balance between compassion and clarity, that's where true leadership lives. Uh, you have spoken about being underestimated more than once. Many people, especially women, can relate to that constant need to prove themselves. How did you learn to stop proving your worth and start owning your story unapologetically?
I've been underestimated more times than I can count because of my gender, because of my color, because of my background, because of my health, even my accent. For a very, very long time, I felt I had to prove myself over and over, as if my worth depended on somebody else's perception. But eventually I realized that something important, proving your worth is exhausting. And it's never truly changes how people see you. People will see you the way they want to see you. It doesn't matter what you do. So, what changed me, what changed everything for me, was embracing my story unapologetically. It did not matter who I spoke to, where I spoke. I stopped trying to fit in what others expected and started owning my very own story, my path, the journey I have lived, the pain, the survival, the victories, and even the failures. I began to speak my truth boldly and leading with just my values and let my actions reflect who I am. And I found from telling my story, I found that I actually opened the doors and allowed other people to share their stories, stories that they were embarrassed about. But because I shared mine, and I don't think you can get worse than that. Starting life through rape is the worst you can get. So when I owned my story, then I stopped shrinking myself. And it also allowed the people that I mentor to stop shrinking themselves as well. So it made life comfortable because I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to remember because it's my story. It's how my story started and where I am right now. So as a leader, when you do that, you start leading from a place of authenticity. And that's when people begin to recognize your real strength, not because you've proved them wrong, but because you've shown up fully as yourself.
That shift from proving to owning is very liberating. It's what transforms confidence from something external to something deeply personal.
Yes.
In your mentoring work, you often talk about invisible challenges people face, the ones no training can really fix. What is something you often see women or migrants struggle with internally that numbers or training can never fix?
In my mentoring programs and the women I work with, and now I'm starting to work with men too, which is amazing. I often see women, especially migrant women, struggling with something that numbers or training can never fix, or I personally cannot fix. It's called self doubt and the fear of not belonging. You know, when you don't belong somewhere, when you believe you don't belong, it is difficult. Um, you can teach skills, you can give people opportunities, you can show up for them, you can show them the pathways to success. But if someone doesn't believe that they're worthy of that success, it becomes a silent barrier. I see talented women, beautiful women, holding themselves back, questioning if they belong in the room, if their voice matters, or if they can really succeed. That internal struggle isn't about capability, it's about mindset, it's about identity, it's about courage. But what helps is creating a space, and this is what I do, is creating a space for them to explore their potential without judgment, encouraging them to own their story, and reminding them that their background, experiences, and perspective are not obstacles, they are strengths, confidence, self belief, and purpose. It is what truly unlock people. And I love when I see women just go, aha, this is their aha moment. And those are the things that no training alone can teach.
That makes so much sense. Growth really starts when people stop hiding what they truly are. Uh,
Yes.
what I read that you received the Order of Australia, and it felt such a full circle moment from where your story began to national recognition for your impact. Did it feel like a personal victory or a moment for every unseen person who walked a similar path?
I still pinch myself about the Order of Australia. Receiving the Order of Australia was so surreal for me. At first, it felt deeply personal, a recognition of my journey, my struggles, and the work I've poured my heart into over the years. But almost immediately, I realized actually, you know what? It wasn't just about me, it was about everybody that has worked this journey with me. It was from for every woman, it was for every migrant, it was for every person with a disability, and every individual who has been overlooked, underestimated, and silenced. It was a recognition of courage too, the courage to survive, the courage to rise, and to keep moving forward even when the world did not see them. And when King Charles recognized me, and now he knows me by name from a small girl from a small village in Africa. That moment, I felt both really humbled and strengthened. Humbled because I know how many others walk paths just as challenging, often unseen, strengthened because the honor reinforced my purpose to continue lifting others, creating opportunities, and showing that resilience, determination, and heart can change lives no matter where you are.
That must have been very emotional, and it is beautiful when recognition becomes a voice for those who never had one. Uh, you have built companies, foundations, and movements, all while keeping your mission very clear. But at the end of the day, purpose often shows up in the small things. When you pause at night, what makes you feel that the day was worth it?
When I pause at night, do I really pause? When I pause at night, it's not the awards, it's not the titles, or even the projects themselves that make the day feel worth it for me. It's the moments where I see real change in people's lives. It could be a woman I've mentored finally believing in her own potential. It could be a refugee feeling seen, valued for the very first time, or a person with a disability stepping into leadership role they never imagined possible. Those moments for me, those small moments, those human moments, transformative reminder for me why I do what I do. At the end of the day, the work feels meaningful when I know that I have created a space for someone else to rise, to be heard, and to live with dignity. That impact, even if invisible to the world, is what truly makes a day worth it for me. With or without the awards, I would do it over and over again. That's what I want to be remembered for, that I lifted others.
That is very grounding, and it's a reminder that impact is not always loud. Sometimes it's found in quiet satisfaction. Carrying a story like yours means carrying both strength and scars. You give so much of yourself to others, and that can be heavy at times. How do you protect your spirit while constantly giving so much of yourself to others?
Carrying a story like mine, a story I never chose, uh, it, for me, does mean carrying both strength and scars. I am very careful with my cup, so I make sure I am not surviving or serving others from an empty cup. So my family, my two children, my daughter and my son, Brittany and Bradley, and my husband Bernard, they keep my cup full. I believe deeply in self-care personally after the stroke. I pray a lot. I read. I take long walks. I even walk to work. From my home to work is 5 kilometers. I walk to work every morning. And in that quiet morning time, I regroup, I reflect, I recharge. I've also learned that no is actually a full sentence, like a no. And I don't have to explain why I'm saying no. Protecting my spirit means setting boundaries and honoring my own needs. When my cup is full, I can give fully and authentically without losing myself along the way. So, yes, I look after myself, and it took me a long time to understand that no is a full sentence.
That is such a powerful statement that no is a full sentence.
Yeah.
That is such a very important reminder, Emily. Self care is not selfish, it is what keeps the mission alive.
Yep.
You have lived through more than the most and turned it into something meaningful for others. If there's one truth for your children or the next generation you could hold on to from your story, what is the one truth about life or success or pain you would want them to remember along after this conversation ends?
For my children, for Brittany and Bradley, and for the next generation, if they're listening or they get an opportunity to listen to this podcast, the one truth I would want them to carry is this: your story is your strength. Life will bring pain, life will bring rejection, and challenges that feel impossible sometimes. But those moments should not define you. What defines you is how you rise, how you choose to keep going, and how you use your experiences to lift others along the way. Is life going to be easy? No. But I want you to know that success isn't just about achievements or recognition, it's about integrity, it's about courage, it's about heart. Pain, as hard as it may feel, can become the soil where your purpose actually grows. If you don't give up, most importantly, don't let anybody else's perception of you become your reality. Even in the hardest moments, you are enough just the way you are because you matter. Your life matters.
Emily, thank you for opening up and sharing so much of yourself today. And every part of your journey shows what real courage looks like. Not the loud, fearless kind, but the kind that rebuilds quietly, one step at a time. And your story is a reminder that strength and softness can exist together, and that
Yes.
purpose often comes from the hardest places. And I am, and obviously the listeners who are listening to this podcast will walk away from this conversation with so much admiration for how you have turned pain into power and how you keep lifting others as you rise. To everyone listening, I hope Emily's words remind you that your story matters no matter where it began. And Emily, it's been so absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you for sharing your light with us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really humbled beyond measure. Please follow me on LinkedIn at Lady Emily Korir OAM, or Facebook at Lady Emily Korir OAM, Instagram, and also we are building the first ever respite center for children with disabilities in Kenya. Please go to our website at betfoundation.org and see how you can help us. Let's do this together. Let's make history. Let's do something that will create a place where children and families with disabilities will truly thrive.
Yes, Emily, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a
Thank you for
very
your
great
time.
day.
You
Yes,
too. Thank you
thank
so,
you.
so much. Bye bye.
Thank you.